Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Dennison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. About 6 months ago, we had the pleasure of interviewing Albilo Couto's grandson, Daniel, who created an online shrine to his grandfather's swimming career. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Letitia Sweitzer. Say hello, Letitia.
Hello, it's good to be here. Just lost my voice.
Letitia is the uncle of honorary Dr. Harry Briggs, and she's written a book about the man and his swimming career. Let me give a brief overview of Dr. Briggs's swimming career. He was the first person to swim from Corsica to Sardinia back in 1955, and he was the first to complete a swim across Lake Erie as well in 1957. For those of you who aren't familiar with Lake Erie, it didn't have a great reputation for cleanliness back in those days, and that swim took him 35 hours and 55 minutes. He was known as the Paddlin Professor because he was a professor of political science, became the first person to swim 58 kilometers across Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, and he swam well until his into his 90s and did, by last count, 43 marathon swims. So Letitia, what I'd like to do is just, please tell us about your uncle. Tell us about the man you knew. You cover things like, did he teach you to swim, for example?
Well, he didn't teach me to swim. He lived in Alaska, and I was a child, but I spent my summers in Rockport, Massachusetts. Harry was from Massachusetts, and he came during the summer sometimes, and we spent some time together. I remember him fondly, and he seemed to kind of like me, so we got along great, but it was very short visits until I spent 5 days with him getting ready to write this book. He was, he had an impish grin, which kind of suited him. And he was unusual. He was unconventional, you might say, his whole life. For example, when he came to Rockport to visit, he would drive from Alaska. He always drove at night, and he slept during the day, which was kind of the way he did everything. So he would show up at 2 a.m. at my great aunt's house. Of course, everyone was asleep and he didn't want to wake us. So he climbed in the kitchen window, got over the sink, and he went to bed. It never dawned on him that, that could be worse than being wakened by the doorbell, So, and when I got to talking to him, I found out that's the way he had kind of always been. He was sort of a rule breaker. He told me how he drove his car one time through the hedge of a neighbor's yard, crossed the yard, and went out the hedge on the other side because the police were after him, and he got to another road and went off. He was a bit of a speeder, so that was, and that kind of thing. One other rule that he broke that I find particularly interesting is that when he was a Marine in Japan, he hit the beaches as a forward intelligence guy. But when the bomb had been dropped and they went into occupied Japan, they were told, do not go to the bomb sites because it's very dangerous because there's radiation. So, of course, he went to Nagasaki, and he took this wonderful picture, which I have. I don't know if I can show pictures on it, but it's just mountains and devastation, except there's one fully intact, undisturbed Shinto arch. It's really an amazing thing. And then he said, and you see, I'm in my 90s now, so the radiation, wasn't all that bad. So, yes, Harry didn't pay too much attention to the rules, and he danced to his own tune. So I've just always been fascinated by him. And
Was this your first book that you wrote?
no, I've been a writer for some years, and I had written mostly books that I was the ghostwriter or co-author. But I think that one book that I wrote, and I also wrote articles, hundreds of articles, like Harry wrote hundreds of articles. So the book, absolutely. He used to say, absolutely. If you'd said, you want to go climb this mountain, he'd say, absolutely. He was game for just about anything. So I wrote one book that's about ADHD, and it's called The Elephant in the ADHD Room. And the elephant is boredom. And it just suits Harry so well. I think he may even be in there because ADHD and boredom, they have to always be doing something to excite their brain just to be happy. So I think he had ADHD, I really do. So he had to be moving, he had to be doing pranks, he had to be causing commotion, that was Harry.
Or like me, being in the principal's office because I was unable to sit in a chair for 8 hours in a day.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
And did Harry have a scrapbook or a box of clippings, or was it everything from his memory?
Did he have boxes? Did he have clippings? He had hundreds and hundreds, and I got all these boxes after he died. And he had every letter he ever wrote. A lot of his clippings were had mud on them because the houses he lived in, his house in Alaska, his business in Alaska, his gymnasium, was wiped out by the earthquake. His first house he ever owned burned down. His house in Florida was damaged or washed away by 3 hurricanes. And of course, he was always game to start over. Yep.
Fantastic. Did you know anything about marathon swimming before you started this 5-day conversation with Harry, or had you done any big swims yourself?
No. I mean, I spent my summers in Massachusetts and learned to swim there more or less. I think someone showed me a few things, but I caught on pretty easily, but I was never one to swim long distances. I don't think I ever, well, I like to keep my head above the water. See, that was the problem. So, I was just a recreational swimmer, but the closest I came as a child when I knew him the most was that he asked me to take pictures of him with the ocean behind and the rocks, and for a publicity thing, so I did that. And I don't know if they were good enough to use or not, but so I didn't spend a lot of time with him. And that's why I just said, I'm going to have to go see him. And the 5 days in the car with him, and I had a recorder on. And when we weren't in the car, I took notes all the time and just let him talk. And, he could talk. So, yeah, 5
Were you driving to Alaska?
No, he was showing me, he lived in Leesville, Louisiana then, and that's where he died. And he took me all to all the places, introduced me to all of his friends. We went, he drove to Texas, which was just over the line, to show me a lake that he would like to live on someday, but never did. Yeah, he was a good talker. So.
And what was the biggest swimming surprise you got when you were talking to him and he said, and did this and that, whatever, and this happened? What was the thing that just dropped your jaw and you kind of went, what?
Well, the thing that I didn't know about but it was not jaw dropping. It was just more is when he told me that he got lost, or his boat lost him, and I think once it was for 4 hours, and that was on Winnipesaukee, and he treaded water. I mean, he didn't tread water. That was part of the surprise, was he never treaded water because it just exhausted him. And so he swam back and forth for 4 hours. And so that's happened a couple times. One his last big swim on his 77th birthday was Tampa Bay, and they also a freighter came in to keep him from, well, not the freighter was just going about its business, and they asked the freighter if it could hold up and let a swimmer pass. Now you can imagine a freighter like a swimmer pass. You got to be kidding. So he had to hold up, and it got to be nighttime, and of course it was hard. And so the tide came in. He had timed it perfectly so the tide would help him, or at least not hurt him. The tide came in wrong. He missed his landing place, and there was nobody there in the dark when he got there. Usually he had a crowd waiting, and that was kind of a turning point for him, that particular swim, because it was kind of when he stopped thinking about the crowd and the acclaim and all that, and it was just, he'd beat it, it was just him in the water. Didn't need anybody else with him. And up until then, he had been very interested in the acclaim, and just to go back a swim that he did on, I think this was, I don't know, it was the lake, and it was 30 some miles, and to do the lake you had to do certain things, and you had to go by this point and that point and the other point. So he had a lot of his audience was people who donated money to support the swim, which would go to charity after expenses, I suppose. And so the people who were the donors were all gathered on a wharf somewhere that was not on this route that he was supposed to go on to make the lake. So he went there instead of where he was supposed to go, and he didn't get credit for that lake. And he was just he just said 34 miles, and I don't get credit for the lake, But by the time he did that swim at age 77, I just kind of felt that he had gotten over that. It was just a matter of courage, just keeping it up.
And when he was talking to you, did you get a sense of the swim or swims he was most proud of, or had the biggest impact on him?
Well, Erie was probably the biggest challenge, and the thing that went down in the record books the most. But I don't know, is just when I think about the end, which is when I start thinking about these things, I just think that he was just proudest of when it was toughest, and that he kept on going, which could have been that swim.
Now, as somebody that's not acknowledging it, but probably getting a little bit older, I'm interested in your comments about Harry kind of moving from the acclaim to the self-satisfaction of having done it. Did he understand that he was getting older and getting slower, or did he still think he was 20 years old?
Oh, he really didn't get it, that he was getting old, or that he ever would get old. And of course, he knew he was slower, and he knew it was shorter, but he never acknowledged he never acknowledged that he was getting old until the day he died.
And he literally kept swimming into his 90s, every chance he could get.
Well, yes. After the Tampa Bay swim, he said he was going to swim on, and I think that was on his birthday. But in any way, he decided to swim, that he wouldn't swim in between, but he was going to swim every birthday. And so he did. I mean, he took and at that point, he wasn't swimming like every day, or, just he wasn't keeping it up. He would start like 2 weeks before, and he'd go. And so he'd swim. And when I went out for his 90th birthday, one day he went and swam in a pool. And, I don't know how many laps, I was there waiting, so it didn't seem like a long time to wait. I don't know, 12 laps maybe. And then he went to a lake and went off the pier, and he told me to watch out for snakes. And I thought, well, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do about them. Another time he went to a river, and he just went to different places for several days. And then on his birthday, it was Tunk's Cypress Inn in a lake in Alexandria, Louisiana. It was not far from where he lived in Leesville. And he had invited, well, everyone knew this was just going to be his big 90th birthday. And I'll have to mention that he gave scholarships in the name of his aunt Letitia, who was my great aunt Letitia, who was a physician in Boston. He did another one for his father and one for his mother, and they were all kind of related to, well, they were to what those people were interested in. So, and I forgot where I was going with that. I tend to wander.
This is his 90th birthday swim in the lake.
Oh, yes. And so because he gave a scholarship for nursing students in honor of his doctor aunt, the student nurses had come, and then all of everyone is there. And so a guy named Thomas Tilley, who was the PR person and more at Northwestern State University, where Harry was still teaching political science, government. He was there and always in the boat. He was his manager, he said. So anyway, Tommy took him out 2 miles in the lake. He slipped into the water as the guests were gathering, and he swam the 2 miles. Now this is age 90. He swam the 2 miles to his party. And this is one thing that surprised me. I should have said everything about Harry surprised me, but I hadn't really seen him swim. I mean, I guess I'd seen him just a few yards away in the beach in Rockport, but it was just so beautiful that, and of course, this is what you all know, but it's just how he was completely under the water, but just this triangle of an arm and just the mouth, because when I swam, I huffed and puffed, but there was no huffing and puffing, and the water's over him, and it's just this kind of a work of art, So the other thing was, I thought his legs would be jelly. That's mine would, I guess. So when they got him out of the boat, they helped him out of the boat, as steps up onto the wharf. When he got his feet on the dock, he was just fine. And he looked up, and all of his friends were up there, but there were all these nursing students, these young, they're mostly girls, young and up there. And man, if was tired, he perked up then. He really loved girls. So he came up the stairs and they all hugged him and fussed over him. And I'm telling you, he was in heaven. He couldn't wait.
This happens when you're 90 then, right? I'm just making a little note here.
Never lost his interest. Never. No. He used to say to me, I was at his house there, and he said, "This is a pretty good place." It was a ruin when he got it, but he fixed it up. He was quite good with carpentry and things like that. So he was fixing them. He said, you think a young lady might really like this house?" And he said, "I put in a pool." Of course, he liked the water, of course, but he just wondered. He said, "Do you think that someone who really doesn't have a whole lot, just a young woman that would like to move in here with me?" I said, "Maybe, I don't know." So in that way, he never thought he was nanny. So he swam. That was the first swim I'd ever seen him do, because I lived in Richmond, Virginia, summers in Rockport, Massachusetts, and he was in New Hampshire yes, he lived there, but he was in Alaska most of the time when I would have known. So, yep, that was the birthday.
With all of the house disasters and whatever, did Harry have any favorite swimming mementos? Did he have a rock from the shore in Lake Erie? Did he have a snake skeleton from Louisiana or something? Was there anything tangible that he treasured?
He loved publicity, so I don't know of anything that he brought like that, but as I said, he had everything that ever been written about him. I mean, boxes and boxes. And of course, he was a sportscaster too, from even before the Second World War. So that was the main thing. But I'll tell you something that he remembered that kind of was almost like it was tangible, was Ted Williams, slugger for the Boston Red Sox, Harry being from Boston. That was his hero. But of course, he never got close to him. He was just a kid in the stands and so on. But when he did Lake Michigan, and failed, now he later succeeded, but when the time that he had to be picked up by the boat, after he recovered from that, Ted Williams called him.
Wow.
And of course, he was very surprised and very delighted. And he said they talked for quite a while. And he said it meant so much to him that he had called, but also that he called when he didn't succeed.
It is one of the odd things about the sport. I tell people is if somebody sets out to swim the English Channel and it is unsuccessful, one of our ladies did said DNF stands for do not fear failure. What happens is hundreds and hundreds of people contact you and tell you how wonderful you are. When you actually swim the English Channel and you're successful, about 50 people call you and go, well done. But it's after those times when you don't quite make it where you really feel the love of the sport and the colleagues. Letitia, one of the things that's been happening in the last couple of years is we've been asking people to look out for those boxes of old mementos. And the Swimming Hall of Fame has a number of those. For example, they've got Gertrude Ederle's personal scrapbook, which is just priceless. And we have people like yourself that are taking that material and turning it into books and articles and blogs and whatever they are. And some of that history is invaluable to us. I certainly didn't know he swam Tampa Bay or Lake Michigan. It's news to me. So we'll take some of that information and update his biography, because in 50 years, there's probably not going to be a lot of new information we're getting about the doctor, but as a Hall of Fame member, we want to honor his career. Tell us a little bit about the book, where folks can get it. Steve will put it on the article as well. But was it something you self-published? How did that all come together?
Well, it was self-published because I wrote it to give to him for his birthday, and I meant to say they had that when he arrived back at the birthday party on his 90th. We had copies of it, and I told him in January when he was 89, I said, I want to do your book. And he was like, why would you want to do that? And he kind of argued, and no one would be interested in me. But it turned out, I think that he didn't want to make it look that he thought he was so important. That seemed to be, but it kind of got him through that because I said, I'm doing it. So, you know, that was, it was, I noticed, I went through my journal I spent a lot of time on that, you know, just writing, but we got it ready by May. His birthday was May 20, and had copies that Tommy Tilly had the university print off. But later I had it published by lulu.com, Lulu.com, which is a self-publishing thing, because I wasn't really going to try to get this out into the world. I'm not a promoter. You can get it on Amazon, which I think is probably what more people are used to. And it's absolutely ! And there is a subtitle. I have the book right here. It's The Memoirs of Harry Briggs, Ph.D. And yeah. I don't know if you can see, but
hold it a little bit further from the camera, towards yourself. We can see it now.
Okay, so that's a picture of him with two of the guys on the boat, and he's looking young and good.
He was always looking young and good. You just had the wrong mirror. He could see it.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say, which I think is kind of different, is that after the time that he swam this lake 34 miles and he didn't get credit, he just said, the heck with that, I'm through with this. He told me that he didn't swim another stroke until he was for 30 years. So that 77th birthday was really, really big for him. And that's the one that he got lost, and he didn't get lost, but he had to go out of his way and get in the tide and so forth. So that's how he started his comeback. And then he just said, I'll do it every birthday. You know, it was just a celebration for him. It was just a different thing after that. But I think it's interesting, about 30 years without swimming. Now, one thing that if you allow me to digress, one thing about the not swimming a stroke is that he went in Alaska, he bought a shrimp boat, not a shrimp boat, a salmon fishing boat. And he took it out to take it to wherever he wanted to have it be at home. And a squall came up, or some kind of a storm, which he could see coming. And he could have gone around, stuck close to shore, but he decided the quickest thing would be to go across this bay. Well, it just put him out in full open water, and he fought. He was by himself. He fought to save that thing, and it finally went down. But before it went down, he took his boots and he tied them around his neck, which is not a good way to swim, but he wanted to have boots because when he got to the shore, I mean, this was Alaska. It wasn't like there were people waiting for him. So he swam to shore, and then he had his boots so he could walk until he found some people or some houses or something. And there's one other interesting swim that he took. It's not like a marathon swim, but when the Marines had taken Saipan, and they were the next island was Tinian. It was a mile and a half away. It was, I think it was called island hopping or something, where they were moving in to Japan. And so one day a call went out saying, is there anyone who is a really good swimmer? Come meet at such and such a place. So Harry was knew he was a good swimmer, so he went, and about 50 guys were there. And they said, oh, we just want to see, you know, how we have something up our sleeve. We'd like to see who can swim. And they had I don't know how long, but there was a course that they had to go to. And no one made it of the 50 people except Harry. They all gave up, or they had to go. I mean, they gave up, yeah, or they came back or whatever. So Harry made them. They said, you're really good. And he said, now what we're thinking about is, how would you like to swim to Tinian? And you're in intelligence. He was in intelligence, you know, be a spy and see what we were getting into. And he said, they said, could you do that? He said, absolutely. So he said, now it would be at night. And, you know, how's that? And he said, well, I can't swim at night without a boat with a light. Well, of course, that killed it. So they gave up that idea. So he didn't have to do that.
I'm just thinking about we have in our Hall of Fame. Generally speaking, people have a career, so they're a little bit older when they get in. But the number of people with attention deficit disorder, the number of people who say things like absolutely, and the number of people who are devastated when they've got a plan and it doesn't happen. I think people will find Harry inspirational, and they'll see a lot in him. Letitia, thank you very, very much for honoring the career of your uncle. Thank you for sifting through all of the records, and it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know the man a little bit better.
Well, I've enjoyed it too, because, you know, not too many people will give you time to, you know, summarize a whole book and a whole life for them. So I appreciate the chance to do that.